The first thing I heard after they said I might never wake up was my wife asking how much keeping me alive would cost. Not whether I was in pain. Not whether I could hear her. Not whether the man she had shared a bed with for 29 years was still somewhere inside that quiet hospital body. Just the cost. My name is Harold Mercer. I was 62 years old, a retired bridge inspector from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I spent most of my life checking what people drive over without thinking. Steel beams, concrete joints, rust lines, stress cracks. Bridges do not collapse in one dramatic second. They fail slowly, one ignored weakness at a time. That is also how a family breaks. Not usually with screaming or flying dishes. It starts with small withdrawals. A birthday forgotten. A phone call declined. A favor treated like an inconvenience. Then one day you wake up inside your own body, unable to move, and hear the people you fed and protected discussing you like an unpaid bill. It happened on Tuesday, March 11th at Allegheny General Hospital, room 614. I remember the date because my granddaughter's science fair had been the night before, and I had promised her I would come. I did. I clapped when her little solar-powered car moved 6 inches. I bought her a milkshake afterward. Then my chest tightened in the parking lot. The doctors later called it a cardiac event with complications. I called it the worst traffic jam my heart ever caused. There was a clot, a fall, a head injury from hitting the curb, and enough medical language flying around me to make a man wish he had paid more attention to those pamphlets in waiting rooms. For 2 days they thought I was unconscious. I was not fully awake, not in any useful way. I could not open my eyes. I could not move my hands. I could not tell them the tube in my throat felt like a garden hose, but I could hear. Not everything. Not all the time. Enough. My wife Celia was 59, elegant in the way locked doors can be elegant. She worked as office manager at a private dental clinic in Squirrel Hill, and had spent years becoming the kind of woman who could make selfishness sound organized. She liked lists, clean counters, and decisions that benefited her first but were presented as practical. My son Nolan was 36. He sold high-end kitchen appliances and wore suits too narrow for his shoulders. He had my height, his mother's impatience, and a relationship with money that made every family meal feel like a loan application. He loved saying he was building something. Mostly he built excuses. My daughter Brielle was 32, a lifestyle photographer who had once charged me $200 for family portraits and then forgot to send the files until Christmas. She was not cruel in the obvious way. She was worse. She could watch cruelty happen and immediately calculate whether objecting would cost her comfort. Then there was Grant Vail, Celia's brother. 55, real estate broker, gold watch, soft hands, loud opinions. Grant had been hovering around my life for 2 years, calling our house an underused asset and my retirement account lazy money. He spoke about money like a preacher speaks about sin, always finding it in other people. The misunderstanding they all lived under was simple. They thought I had never heard the conversations that stopped when I entered a room. They thought I did not notice Nolan asking about my life insurance before asking about my blood pressure. They thought I believed Celia when she said Grant was only helping us plan. Most of all, they thought I had signed the old paperwork and left it untouched. The will from 2014. The medical power of attorney naming Celia. The beneficiary forms written before Nolan started gambling in clean shoes and Brielle started measuring love by convenience. They thought the old version of me was still legally in charge. They were wrong. 6 months before that hospital room, I had changed everything. I did it quietly, not because I hated them, but because a bridge inspector knows when a structure has shifted. You do not wait for collapse before closing the lane. You set up cones. You redirect traffic. You protect whatever can still be saved. The person who helped me was Marcus Bell, my neighbor and best friend of 40 years. Marcus was a retired high school principal with a laugh that shook windows and a moral compass so straight it made other men uncomfortable. He had sat with me on my back porch one October evening and listened while I finally said the words. "They're waiting for me to die," I told him. Marcus did not argue. Good friends sometimes love you best by refusing to lie. He only asked, "What are you going to do about it?" That was Marcus. Not dramatic, not shocked, just already looking for the tool cabinet. We met with Denise Carver, an estate attorney, downtown 3 days later. Denise had silver hair, red glasses, and the patience of a woman who had watched entire families turn into wolves over china cabinets. She asked hard questions. I answered every one. By the end of November, my documents told the truth my dinner table refused to say. Marcus became my medical decision maker. A trust was created for my granddaughter Lucy with education and housing protections. Celia received what Pennsylvania law required her to receive, but not 1 inch more. Nolan and Brielle were removed as direct beneficiaries. My old fishing cabin near Erie was left to Marcus's youth mentoring nonprofit. I did not tell my family. That is the part people may judge. Let them. I had spent years telling them what hurt me, what worried me, what I needed. They heard only the parts that interfered with their plans. Paper, unlike family, does not pretend not to understand. When I collapsed in that parking lot, Celia arrived at the hospital 3 hours later. I know because I heard a nurse mention the time. Marcus arrived first. Of course he did. He had been at the science fair with me, sitting 2 rows back, pretending not to cry over a 3rd-grade solar car. He was the first voice I remember clearly. "Harry, you stubborn old bolt, you better fight." That was Marcus calling me Harry, though nobody else did. His hand was on my shoulder. I could feel pressure, warmth, something real anchoring me through the fog. Then the doctors asked him to step out when Celia arrived. Celia's perfume entered before her voice did. Gardenia and something sharp. I had bought her that perfume for our 25th anniversary. Hearing it in that room felt like seeing flowers left on a grave before the person was dead. She asked the doctor for a realistic picture. Her tone was polished enough to slide under a door. Dr. Amelia Rhodes was the cardiologist. Calm voice, clipped vowels, no nonsense. She explained that I was critical but stable. There was swelling from the fall, heart damage that needed monitoring, and a possible procedure if my numbers improved. It would be expensive, complicated, and not guaranteed. She said those words carefully. Then Nolan asked, "When you say expensive, what are we actually talking about?" I remember wanting to laugh. My son, my boy, who once swallowed a penny and cost me an emergency room visit, was now pricing my survival like a backsplash installation. Dr. Rhodes did not answer the way he wanted. She said the hospital had financial counselors. Celia sighed. It was a small sound, but marriage teaches you the alphabet of another person's disappointment. Dr. Harold would not want to be a burden, she said. He was always very practical. Practical. That word had carried many crimes in our house. Practical meant skip the vacation. Practical meant loan Nolan money again. Practical meant silence. Dr. Rhodes asked whether I had an advance directive. Celia said yes too quickly. She told them she was my medical power of attorney, and that I would not want extreme measures. Nolan muttered that Dad always hated wasting money on hospitals. Brielle said nothing. Silence from her had always been a signature. Then Grant spoke. I had not known he was in the room until his voice arrived slick as oil on rainwater. At some point, doctor families have to be sensible. Don't waste money on him if the outcome is just suffering. There it was. The sentence. The one that cut through sedation tubes, pain, everything. Do not waste money on him. Not on treatment. Not on Dad. Not on Harold. On him, as if I were already an object in the room. A broken appliance. An old truck with repairs higher than resale value. Somewhere inside that trapped body, something in me went completely still, then completely awake. Welcome back to Dad's quiet revenge. Get comfortable, because sometimes the loudest betrayal happens in a hospital room where the person in the bed cannot lift a finger. And sometimes that person hears every word anyway. My family had every chance to choose love. They chose math. Unfortunately for them, I had learned math too. Dr. Rhodes did something I will respect until the day I actually die. She did not accept Celia's answer as the end of the road. She said, I need the documents verified through hospital legal before any major change in care. Celia did not like that. I could hear it in the pause. Grant tried again. His wife knows his wishes. Dr. Rhodes replied, and the hospital needs the current legal documents. A bridge held. A small one maybe, but I have made a career out of small things holding. That doctor bought me time. She did not know she was also buying my family enough rope to knot their own trap. Later that evening, when the room was quieter, Nolan and Celia talked near the window. They thought machines were louder than they were. Nolan said the lake cabin could go fast if they priced it right. Celia told him not to be stupid, probate took time. Brielle whispered, what about Lucy's college thing? Celia said, we'll handle Lucy later. Lucy. My granddaughter. 9 years old, missing one front tooth, keeper of rocks, champion of cardboard volcanoes. The one person in that family who still ran to my porch because she wanted me, not something from me. Hearing her reduced to later did more damage than the tube in my throat. The next voice I heard was Marcus. He came after visiting hours because Marcus had spent 30 years running schools and knew every building had a rule and a person tired enough to bend it. He leaned close to my ear. "Harry, Denise called me. Hospital legal found the updated directive. Celia is not in charge." If a trapped man could smile, I would have. Marcus continued softer. "Blink if you can hear me." I tried. Nothing happened. Panic rose so fast it almost drowned me. Then he squeezed my hand and said, "Don't force it. I know you're in there. I have sat through your phishing stories for 40 years. You are not leaving quietly." The next morning, everything changed. Dr. Rhodes returned with a neurologist, a nurse named Pilar, Marcus, and Celia. Celia's voice had lost its polish. Hospital legal had confirmed that Marcus Bell held my current medical power of attorney. Celia said it had to be a mistake. Marcus said nothing. That was his gift. Silence without surrender. Dr. Rhodes explained the plan. Continue cardiac support. Monitor brain swelling. Reassess procedure options. Marcus approved it. Celia asked whether a neighbor could really overrule a wife. The hospital attorney, a man with tired eyes and excellent timing, said, "When the signed directive is valid and current, yes." Grant exploded first. Men like Grant always do when paperwork refuses to flatter them. This is ridiculous. Harold was not in his right mind. Marcus finally spoke. He was in his right mind when he signed it, and you were in his wallet when he did. The room went quiet enough that I could hear Brielle inhale. Celia left. Not dramatically. She had never wasted drama when coldness could do the job. Nolan followed her, muttering about lawyers. Brielle stayed a few seconds longer. I felt her near the bed. She whispered, "Dad." For one wild moment I thought she might touch my hand. She did not. Her shoes clicked away. By Friday I could blink. 1 for yes. 2 for no. It was ugly, exhausting communication, but it was mine. Pilar, the nurse, cried the first time I answered correctly. She asked whether I knew where I was. 1 blink. She asked whether I was in pain. 1 blink. She asked whether I heard my family. 1 blink. Dr. Rhodes did not react like television doctors. She just grew very still. Then she said, "Mr. Mercer, did you hear the conversation about limiting treatment?" 1 blink. "Did you hear your brother-in-law say not to waste money on you?" 1 blink. Pilar's hand tightened around the chart. That afternoon, hospital patient advocacy entered the story. A woman named Leona Patel came with a tablet, 2 witnesses, and the kind of calm that makes nonsense sit down. She documented what I could communicate. Not perfectly. Not like a courtroom confession. But enough. Enough is a powerful word when the other side is still lying. Marcus called Denise Carver. Denise came to the hospital at 6:00 p.m., wearing a green coat and an expression that could cut twine. She stood beside my bed and said, "Harold, I am going to ask you questions. Blink yes or no. We will keep this clean. Lawyers love clean. So do inspectors." She confirmed I understood who I was. She confirmed I knew my family members. She confirmed I wanted Marcus to remain my decision maker. Then, she asked whether I wanted any changes made to the trust once I could sign or record a statement. I blinked once. She smiled. Not warmly. Precisely. Celia did not know any of this yet. She thought the problem was temporary. She thought she could argue Marcus away, cry to Nolan, call Grant, and wait until I either died or woke up too confused to remember. That was the hidden arrogance in my family. They did not believe I had a memory unless it served them. Saturday, March 15th, I had the procedure. Marcus approved it. Dr. Rhodes performed it with another specialist, whose name I still cannot pronounce. It was not magic. Recovery was slow, humiliating, and full of small wars. Breathing without panic. Moving 1 finger. Swallowing water. Letting strangers help me exist. Celia visited once before the procedure. She sat beside my bed and performed grief in a camel-colored coat. "Harold, I only wanted what was best," she whispered. If I could have spoken, I would have asked best for whom. Instead, I blinked twice when she asked if I was comfortable. She did not understand the answer. Nolan came with a folder. That is not a joke. My son came to intensive care carrying paperwork. He told Marcus it was just insurance authorization. Denise, who happened to be there, asked to see it. Nolan's face changed. The folder contained a proposed limited power of attorney, allowing Celia to access my accounts for household continuity. Denise read 2 lines and closed it. Absolutely not. Nolan said I was his father and he was trying to help. Marcus said. Then bring flowers, not account access. Pilar turned her face toward the monitor, but I saw her shoulders shake once. Even half-dead, I knew a suppressed laugh when I saw one. That folder became the first piece of the second case. Denise noticed the notary stamp on a preparatory page. The notary worked at Celia's dental office. The date was March 12th when I was already in ICU. My signature line was blank, but the structure was ready. It was not a crime yet. It was intent wearing dress shoes. By Monday, I could whisper. The first word I said was not poetic. It was water. The second was Marcus. The third, after Denise leaned in and asked whether I wanted to give a recorded statement, was yes. My voice sounded like gravel being dragged through a pipe. It was still mine. Denise recorded me under hospital supervision. Slowly, painfully, I stated that I had heard my family discuss withholding care based on cost. I stated that I had not authorized any new power of attorney. I stated that I wanted Marcus and Denise to protect my assets, especially the trust for Lucy. Every sentence cost breath. I paid. The next day, Denise filed emergency notices with my bank brokerage firm, insurance company, and county property office. Freeze any unusual transactions. Reject any new authorization not coming directly through her office. Notify counsel of attempted changes. It was not revenge yet. It was putting locks on doors after hearing thieves measure the hallway. Celia discovered the locks on Wednesday. I know because she called Marcus 14 times before lunch. He answered the 15th on speaker with Denise sitting beside him in my room. Celia's voice was ice under velvet. You have no right to interfere in my marriage. Marcus looked at me. I blinked once. I have Harold's legal directive, Marcus said. You have hurt feelings and a bad plan. Denise raised one eyebrow like she might frame that sentence. Celia said she would contest everything. Denise leaned toward the phone. Good. Please put all of your claims in writing. We are especially interested in the March 12th document preparation. Silence. Not confusion. Recognition. Celia knew exactly which paper Denise meant. For the first time since waking up inside my own nightmare, I felt the balance shift. Consequences had entered the room wearing sensible shoes and carrying a file folder. If you have stayed this long, remember this. The person who stays calm is not always weak. Sometimes he is counting. Sometimes he is listening. Sometimes he is lying in a hospital bed learning exactly who thinks love should come with a spending cap. Hit like if you believe people reveal themselves when they think the witness cannot answer. On March 22nd, I left intensive care for a step-down unit. I was thinner, weaker, and angrier than I wanted to admit. Recovery gives a man too much time to think. I thought about Celia making soup when Nolan had pneumonia. Brielle sleeping on my chest as a baby. Grant borrowing my ladder and returning it broken. Memory is cruel because it refuses to sort people into simple boxes. My family had loved me sometimes. They had also tried to cheapen my life when it became inconvenient. Both things were true. That is what made the betrayal heavy. Villains in real families do not wear horns. They wear the sweater you bought them. Brielle came alone on March 24th. She stood at the foot of the bed, eyes swollen, purse clutched against her side. Dad, I didn't say it, she whispered. I looked at her for a long time. My voice was still rough. You didn't stop it. She flinched. Good. Some words should leave a mark. She sat down. For 10 minutes she cried without managing to say anything useful. Then she told me the truth. Nolan owed Grant $80,000 from a failed investment scheme involving imported stone countertops. Celia knew. Grant had been pressuring them. They believed my life insurance and cabin sale would solve everything. There it was, the secret under the secret. They were not only tired of medical bills, they were already spending death money in their heads. Nolan was drowning. Grant was holding the rope, and Celia had decided my survival was financially inconvenient. Brielle had known pieces enough to be ashamed, not enough to be innocent. Lucy's trust, Brielle said. Mom said you were being manipulated. She said Marcus had turned you against us. I laughed once, and it hurt my chest. Marcus did not turn me against anyone. He stood still while you all walked over the line. Brielle covered her face. This time I let her cry. I did not forgive her that day. Forgiveness is not a vending machine where tears go in and absolution drops out. But I did ask Denise to give Brielle one thing. A path. If she gave a sworn statement about what she knew when she knew it and what Celia and Nolan had discussed, I would not cut off contact with Lucy. She signed the statement 2 days later. Not for nobility, maybe Maybe for fear. Maybe because some small, decent part of her had finally fought through the weeds. I accepted the statement without pretending it fixed everything. Truth is not a broom. It does not sweep the whole floor in one pass. The sworn statement changed the weather. Denise sent a letter to Grant's brokerage office where he held his real estate license under a regional firm. The letter did not accuse wildly. It documented concern that Grant had pressured family members regarding anticipated estate assets while a principal was incapacitated. Professional boards dislike the smell of elder financial exploitation. Grant called me himself. I was in rehab learning to climb 3 practice stairs with a therapist named Omar, who treated my stubbornness like weather. My phone rang. Grant's name lit up. Omar asked if I wanted privacy. I said no. Then I answered and put it on speaker. Pettiness properly measured can be medicine. Grant began with false concern. "Harold, buddy, glad to hear you're improving." Buddy. Men say buddy when they want to step over blood. I let him talk. He warned me that Marcus and Denise were isolating me. He said Celia was devastated. He said family should handle family matters privately. That phrase always means hide the shovel. I interrupted him with the strongest voice I had. "Grant, you told my doctor not to waste money on me." Silence. Omar looked at the floor. Grant cleared his throat. That was taken out of context. I closed my eyes. Context had become the coward's favorite coat. "Then put your context in writing," I said. He did not. They never do when the paper might survive them. Instead, he hung up and called Celia. Celia called Nolan. Nolan called Brielle. Brielle called me crying and said everyone was blaming her. I told her blame is what guilty people throw when they run out of walls. By April 2nd, my attorney had filed for legal separation from Celia. 29 years of marriage reduced to exhibits, account histories, property lists, and 1 hospital statement. People think divorce is loud. Mine began with a printer. Page after page coming out warm, carrying proof that love had become an accounting department. Celia's lawyer responded with a letter claiming emotional distress, confusion, and misunderstanding during a medical crisis. Denise sent back my recorded statement, Brielle's sworn statement, the attempted power of attorney draft, and hospital notes confirming that I had been responsive while they discussed care. The next letter from Celia's lawyer was much shorter. Nolan's life cracked next. His employer discovered wage garnishment notices connected to debt he had hidden. That was not my doing. That was gravity. But Denise's inquiry into the attempted financial documents led to questions about whether he had used customer deposits to cover personal shortages. By mid-April, he was suspended pending review. He came to rehab angry. Not sorry, angry. He stood near the door because Omar had already told security not to let him close if I looked uncomfortable. "You ruined me," Nolan said. I was sitting with a walker in front of me wearing slippers and a cardigan. Not exactly a throne, but it did the job. "No," I said. "I survived you." His face twisted. "You don't know what pressure I'm under." "I know exactly what pressure is," I said. "I inspected bridges for 37 years. Pressure reveals whether the structure was honest." He did not like that. Men who confuse excuses with explanations rarely enjoy metaphors that bite. He said Grant had trapped him. He said Celia had promised the insurance would fix it. He said he never wanted me dead. That last sentence came out too late to be useful. I looked at my son and saw every age he had ever been. 6 with skinned knees. 16 with a dented bumper. 36 with empty hands. "You wanted me convenient," I said. He cried then, or tried to. I had seen Nolan cry many times when crying could move a bill from his table to mine. This time I did not pick it up. I told security he could leave. The door closed softly behind him. That softness felt final. Celia waited longer. She was strategic enough to understand that first contact mattered. She came to rehab on April 11th with no makeup, which for Celia was a costume. She held a paper bag from my favorite bakery. Almond rolls. 30 years of marriage teaches a woman where to aim. "I was scared," she said. I looked at the bag. Of losing me, she did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. She sat across from me, smaller than I remembered, though maybe I was finally seeing her without the furniture of habit around her. Grant was pressuring everyone. Nolan was desperate. I panicked. "You told a doctor not to spend money keeping me alive," I said. She closed her eyes. "I didn't say that." "No. You let your brother say it while you stood there wearing my wedding ring." That landed. Her hand moved to the ring without permission from her pride. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For years, Celia had won arguments by making me tired. She could stretch a conversation until my anger lay down from exhaustion. But illness had stripped me to essentials. I had only so much breath, and I was no longer willing to spend it decorating the truth. I changed the will before the hospital, I told her. She stared at me. There it was. Not grief, not shock over my hurt. Calculation, waking up and finding the house empty. Before she asked. October. Her face changed by degrees. 6 months of imagined control vanished in one word. The trust for Lucy stands, I said. Marcus remains trustee. You receive what the law requires. Nolan receives nothing directly. Brielle's access depends on her remaining clean with the court and with me. Grant receives the gift of never being invited into my life again. My voice shook by the end, but it held. Celia whispered, "After everything I gave you, I almost laughed." There it was, the old invoice. I looked at the woman I had married in 1995, the woman who once danced barefoot with me in a rented hall because we could not afford a band. I wondered when partnership had become billing. You gave me years, I said. So did I. But when the room got honest, you counted the cost of my breathing. She stood then, bakery bag still in her hand. You will regret this. I pressed the call button, not because I was afraid, because I was finished hosting performances. The settlement took 3 months. Celia contested, then softened, then contested again when Grant whispered into her ear. Denise stayed patient. Marcus stayed furious in a quiet, educational way. Brielle kept bringing Lucy to visit, supervised at first. Lucy drew pictures of me with giant muscles and a superhero cape. Children are generous editors. The final agreement left Celia with the house sale proceeds required under marital law, her retirement accounts, and none of the assets she had mentally spent. Nolan filed bankruptcy and lost his job. Grant's firm released him after an internal review, using language so polished it nearly squeaked. He called it politics. I called it inspection results. Brielle remained complicated. She gave truthful statements. She apologized without asking for money, which was new. She brought Lucy every Saturday during rehab and did not once mention inheritance. I noticed. I noticed things. Not because I trust easily now, but because fairness matters even after betrayal. On July 3rd, I walked out of rehab with a cane, Marcus on one side and Lucy on the other. She had decorated the cane with removable star stickers. Denise met us outside with papers for me to sign because lawyers are allergic to empty hands. I signed the final trust amendment on the hood of Marcus's car. The amendment added one thing: a scholarship fund at Lucy's school for children being raised by grandparents or guardians. Nothing huge. Nothing that would make a newspaper. Just enough to turn some of my money into doors for kids who needed adults that showed up. Celia would have called it sentimental. That made me like it more. I moved into a smaller townhouse 5 blocks from Marcus. No stairs inside. Good light in the kitchen. A porch just large enough for 2 chairs and an argument with the mailman. My old house sold in August. I watched strangers carry out furniture I had once believed would outlast the marriage. Objects are cocky that way. Celia called once after the sale. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was calm, almost soft. She said she hoped I was healing. She said she missed our old life. Then she said Nolan was still struggling and perhaps I could reconsider some support. There it was, the spoon tapping the same empty bowl. I deleted the message. Not angrily. Deleting can be peaceful. A small digital burial. Marcus was on my porch drinking terrible lemonade I had made myself. He watched me set the phone down. You okay, Harry? I looked at the sunset, catching the brick buildings across the street. Getting there, I said. Brielle brought Lucy the next morning. Lucy ran inside with a shoebox full of rocks, each one labeled with scientific names she had mostly invented. Brielle stayed by the door. Mom called you, she said. I nodded. She called me too. And Brielle looked down. I told her I wasn't asking you for money. That was not redemption. Not yet. But it was a plank over water. Enough to step on once carefully. I invited her to stay for lunch. She cried in my kitchen, while Lucy explained that one rock was definitely from the moon because it had moon attitude. Grief and comedy make strange roommates. They manage. People ask when they hear pieces of this story whether I ever loved my family after that. The question is wrong. Love did not vanish. It changed jobs. It stopped being a blindfold and became a boundary. I love Nolan enough to hope he becomes honest. I love Celia enough to never again fund her comfort with my silence. As for Grant, I wish him exactly the life his choices can afford. That is not bitterness. That is precision. A bridge inspector learns that every structure carries its own load rating. Some people can hold trust. Some can hold only access until you take the keys back. I still go to cardiology appointments. Dr. Rhodes says I am stubborn, which is medical language for alive. Pilar sends postcards from whatever unit she transfers to always signed. Keep blinking yes to good things. Omar once mailed me a tiny plastic staircase as a joke. I keep it on my desk like a trophy. Marcus remains my medical power of attorney. He also remains annoying about sodium. Denise remains my attorney, and occasionally my conscience with better stationery. Lucy's trust is safe. The scholarship fund sent its first check in September to a boy whose grandmother cried so hard on the phone that Denise had to take off her glasses. On the anniversary of the hospital day, I drove to Allegheny General and sat in the parking lot where the whole mess began. Not inside, just the lot. The air smelled like rain and exhaust. I thought about the tube, the machine, Celia's perfume, Grant's sentence, and the strange mercy of being underestimated. They thought I could not hear. That was their first mistake. They thought hearing was useless without movement. That was their second. They thought paperwork was just paper. That was the one that cost them. Paper can be a bridge too if you build it before the flood. I went home before dark. Lucy had left a drawing on my porch, me standing beside a bridge with stars over it and a speech bubble saying, "Still here." I taped it to my refrigerator. 3 words. Better than any inheritance fight. Better than revenge even. Still here. That is the part my family never understood. I did not survive because I wanted to punish them. I survived because my life was not theirs to price. My breath was not a line item. My future was not a debt solution. And the people who thought otherwise learned something simple, expensive, and permanent. When someone you love is lying silent in a hospital bed, speak as if his soul is sitting up taking notes. Because maybe it is. Maybe he hears every word. Maybe he already changed the locks months ago. Maybe the old man you counted out still knows exactly how to inspect a failing bridge.